all my years of coaching and fathering and teaching and you name it, leadership positions, I have to be honest, I don't have any formula for looking into people's hearts and minds and souls. I mean, who does, right? But there's no secret to that. It's a matter of experience and perception.
Welcome to the Winners Find a Way Show, Episode 8, The Simplistic Approach with my former collegiate tennis coach, Darrell Davies, longtime head official of the USTA 18U and 16U Boys National Championships in tennis, commonly known as Nats at the Zoo, where the champion is an automatic feeder into the U.S. Open Tennis Championships, the Grand Slam that started this week in New York. So no better timing than discussing this with Darrell about positioning yourself, insect mentality, the ingredients of success, taking a simplistic approach, and adaptability. You've got to adapt and change to be a more successful person and have a more successful outcome. Join us, Episode 8, The Simplistic Approach with Darrell Davies. I have with me today Darrell Davies. Darrell, say hello.
Hello, everybody.
So excited to have you, Darrell. Let's talk quickly about the show before I dive into a little bit of your background. If you're out there and you're listening, have you ever faced stiff adversity, felt like the losses are mounting and you need to find a better way? You've come to the right place. Successful people have often encountered and been challenged in many adversities, and they've overcome them. So whether you're an entrepreneur, an athlete, a business leader, looking to start your journey today, you want to be elite, this is the podcast for you, and we are thrilled that you are here today. Darrell Davies, if you have questions for Darrell, please ask them in the chat. We'll get to them, and we may send you a note back even on those questions. But there'll be time at the end for a little Q&A, so you can put those in. Let's talk about a few highlights about Darrell Davies. Darrell, before I do that, where do people find you online? You have email. You have how do people get in touch with Darrell Davies?
Sure. I have an email. D. Davies, that's my other one. The one I'm using now is tcoach.3349@gmail.com. That's tcoach as in tennis.
And you're in LinkedIn?
I'm not in LinkedIn actively, but I do have Facebook contact as well.
Okay, so I can find you on Facebook, Darrell Davies. All right, perfect. A few highlights I jotted down about you. Longtime university professor at Kalamazoo Valley Community College. A longtime tennis coach for that institution. Pretty good tennis player yourself, by the way, and pickleball player too now, which of course we're moving all to in our age, right? And then you've been an official for the USTA and tennis for a long time, and now you've been the head official for the Kalamazoo Boys National Tennis Championships for how many years now?
Well, I've been the head referee since 2006. I started working that tournament in actually 1979.
Oh, wow. Okay, so you got 15 years as the head referee this year. 15-year anniversary for you. That's pretty awesome. And Did you guys have did they have the tournament last year under COVID?
They didn't. The USTA decided not to have it here in Kalamazoo. They were intending to split it up. We have both the 16s and the 18s age divisions. So they intended to put the 18s down in Orlando, which is the main USTA campus now, and put the 16s, I think they were going to do it in Memphis, Tennessee. They were not able to carry through with that idea at all. So the boys nationals did not occur at all last year.
Wow. And that's for people that don't know, like that's storied history. This tournament has gone on for how long, Darrell?
In 2019, it was the 75th year at which it was held at Kalamazoo College Stowe Stadium.
Wow. I mean, and that's 75 years at one location for those, like this tennis in sports in our history in the United States, this is a big deal. And what a lot of people don't know about this tournament also is that if you win that 18U Boys Championship, you have an automatic bid to the Grand Slam U.S. Open, which you and I both know how hard it is to get a seat or to get that ticket punched into that tournament.
Absolutely. And although this is an amateur event, for the last 10 years, we have allowed professional players into it simply because the younger players have been playing more professional events, and especially in Europe, and we couldn't really exclude those players. So we do have a number of players, especially in the 18s age division, that are technically professional players. They have won money abroad. So things certainly have evolved with this tournament to accommodate, as you would, the game of tennis as it has developed internationally.
It's awesome. Well, and we talked about the money now, and a first round loss at the U.S. Open is worth $63,000 the last time I checked. So
yeah,
that's for losing, folks. That's not like you won that. Right? Like, I don't know what the second round, that means you won one. I think the second round must be worth 80 or 85 then or something, right?
Pretty much, yeah.
You can imagine, folks, this is a competitive environment for people to kind of make. I mean, that's real money. I mean, that's a lot of money. That's a lot more money than some people make all year, right? So it's a big deal. Darrell, talk about this for a minute. Like, let's talk a little bit about your why. You've influenced tons of young people. I mean, obviously on a university campus, you've seen 18 to 21-year-olds your whole life. And you're so involved with this group now with the boys nationals. Why do you come on the show and you talk about the challenges you faced? What's the impact for you in that?
Well, I had a pretty nice upbringing, pretty nice life. It wasn't difficult, challenging as such. But we all have to find our way. We all have to find our identity, as it were, and sort of dovetail that into our life. And a lot of influences, of course, happen along the way for all of us to do that. So I'm not one of those hardcore, hard time, I rose above adversity kind of stories. But as you noted, I've been doing the tournament for since 1979. I taught at the KVCC for 49 years. I have persevered. And Lou Holtz wrote one of his books, Wins, Losses, and Lessons Learned. And in there, he lists 4 characteristics of winners, as it were. And he didn't mean winner-loss in terms of games all the time, but in life in general. And one of his 4 core principles is perseverance. So as I look back at my life, 2 things stand out. Perseverance is certainly one of them. The other one is, quote, serendipity. I mean, chance events. Chance events happen to all of us, of course, but the difference between the impact of those chance events is what the heck do you do with them? How do you handle them? So I've been fortunate, been surrounded by a lot of good people who had my best interest in mind, showed me good leadership. And as I told over the years, as you can imagine, as you mentioned, I deal with college age 18 to 22 or so kids all the time. And periodically over the 49 years, and I teach a very hard course, or I taught a very hard course. It's in human anatomy and physiology, not your elective type course. So these people who go into that course supposedly know what they want to do. They want to go in the healthcare profession. But they're still looking for direction, of course. And from time to time, we'd get into a discussion, and the topic would come up, Darrell, how did you, or Professor Davies, how did you end up, how you are, you can do this and that. And I have a simple answer to that question. I was lucky in terms of my environment. And I point out to them, I find the young folks today have an extremely challenging task because in my day, everything was consistent. My mom told me something. My dad told me the same thing. My teachers did. The politicians did. The corporate leaders did. The athletes did. And I didn't have much of a choice. I mean, I just did what everybody showed me was the right thing to do. But today's world is unbelievably challenging for these youngsters. Every time they turn around, whether it be social media or their own friends, they're hearing something different, getting different. So I'm fortunate, and I appreciate the way my life has developed. I don't know about the young kids today. They're so confused because of that input, the multiple inputs they get. So.
Well, that's, you and I have talked about this before, and it's really, when you said it to me the first time, it was impactful because I realized that, so I don't see that the same as luck for you, right? I see that as you were always preparing and positioning yourself because you got a lot of alignment around those people who told you the right things to do. And so you learned the right things to do, and then you did them, right? Which is, that's step two. As a professor, you tell them the information like, oh, I didn't study it, teach. Was that wrong? Like, well, yeah, you failed, right? So you have to actually do it. You did do it, positioning yourself for opportunity. So when that opportunity presented itself, they were like, hey, Darrell Davies is a guy we want. Like, he's always done this. In our world, we talk about that card. Like, we all want to lead. And if we're playing that card game, we want aces. And to me, an ace is coachability, adaptability, handles responsibility, and does that again and again, proving dependability. And I'm like, wow. And I have aces on my team, and I'm like, wow, I've got something that needs to be done. Where's Nissa? Because she's an ace, right? I know that she's all those four things. And so it's very interesting. You mentioned a really strong challenge for the youth that are coming up now, that there is a lot of different opinions. There are a lot of different, it doesn't feel aligned that this is the only option. So there's some really cool things about having more options, but there's a real big challenge of having too many options, no focus, and lack of direction. So, boy, that's impactful, Darrell. That's very impactful. For people that don't know, my storied athletic background, Darrell and I were together for 2 runs at a national championship together as we went down to Tyler, Texas for the National Junior College Tennis Championships. I was a player and Darrell was a coach. Darrell went many times. I went twice. The 2 years I was with Darrell in his program. So that was an impactful time. And, one of the things that I love about sport, Darrell, is I've been blessed too, man, in this, that I played in 3, state championships as a high school baseball player. I played 2 national championships as a college tennis player. I played in conference championships as a college baseball player, and then coached in 3 World Series, right? Like big game, like impact, the highest level that you're trying to reach wherever you're at, was kind of there. And let's talk a little bit about that, what you saw from your athletes, like dealing with the pressure of the moment. I love how John Wooden talked about how being great when your best is needed. And today I always point immediately to like Tom Brady, right? Like when his best is needed, or in tennis world, Darrell, you'll really appreciate. I always felt like Roger Federer, like when your best is needed, like, wait a minute, Roger lowered his unforced errors by 10% in the championship, where everybody else, we get tight and we make more unforced errors. Like, he's actually lowering his number, right? It's like, wait, what? He's playing better than, he hasn't even lost a set yet, and now he's in the championship playing better? This guy is unbelievable. Talk a little bit about what you saw there as a coach and player. Winners Find a Way show is brought to you by Data-Driven Operations, powered by Journeys. Journeys is a software solution that helps you create a winning formula for your organization. DD Ops, powered by Journey, helps you act as one, see as one, work as one, play as one, win as one. Are you looking for visibility, coachability, and productivity amongst your team? DD Ops is your software. Click on the link in the show notes to learn more.
Well, I lump some of the things that are hard to quantify. I simply call them the intangibles. I had players that if they split sets, I could walk away and be pretty assured that they would win a third set. Or if they got into a tiebreak, for example, I could walk away pretty sure that they would win that. There are other players, though, if they split sets, I'd kind of walk away thinking that, well, they probably are not going to win that. Mm-hmm. Now, I've never, in all my years of coaching and fathering and teaching and you name it, leadership positions, I have to be honest, I don't have any formula for looking into people's hearts and minds and souls. I mean, who does, right?
Yeah.
Some claim they may, but there's no secret to that. It's a matter of experience and perception. So what does make that difference? There are some ingredients that contribute to success. some basic ingredients. Lou Holt said
Yes.
perseverance is one of them. The other one is showing up. I don't know who
Yeah.
said this, but they said, I think it was a comedian, but it's a pretty relevant thing, that like 70% of success is simply showing up. And that's an important thing when you're teaching, and I have an 8 o'clock in the morning class,
Yeah. Be
20
there.
people in the room. And, I've often wondered, why do they show up really, to listen to this lecture? So showing up is critical. Perseverance is critical. Focus is critical. Now you can say focus, everybody does, like that they do in tennis, keep your eye on the ball. What the heck does that really mean? Mm-hmm. Well, focus, in my opinion, means you keep it simple. Tennis, maybe like golf, but tennis is a very psychological game and can be emotional as well. So sure, there are skills, and skills are easy to teach. I mean, you can teach anybody to hit a tennis ball pretty well, but that's not what makes the difference between the successful outcome or the less than successful outcome. So tennis can be overcomplicated sometimes. And so I do with a KISS method, keep it simple, stupid. So simplify things, get down to the basics, perseverance, showing up, and then realize in tennis anyway, a very important principle that a lot of even successful players miss some of the times, and that is you can win a match by simply allowing your opponent to lose.
Yeah. So
often tennis players will walk out there thinking you have to win every match.
Yeah.
Therefore, I have to win more points. I have to win my. Well, not really. And when you think that way, I've got to win, it puts the pressure on you. If you can kind of turn that around and say, well, I'm not going to pressure myself to win. I'm going to pressure myself to simply allow my opponent to lose.
Yeah.
The blatant reality of tennis is, who wins a match? Well, it's the one who hits the ball over the net the last time, right? Yeah. I mean, it's pretty simple to talk about. So those are the kind of things that I try to employ, and also the focusing on positive outcomes as opposed to avoiding negative ones. There was, I don't know if it was during your era or not, but I came across this guy named Dr. Dennis Waitley, who was a motivational speaker, much like you and your ilk, but he worked with NCAA, he worked with Olympic athletes, with NASA. And I thought, well, we're driving down to Florida on our southern trip, and we're going to be in that van for 24 hours for crying out loud. I got to do something. And this will kind of date me, of course. But so I ordered a set of tapes, cassette tapes of his book. And I thought, what the heck? I want to listen to these anyway. And, I'll have the players listen to it. They don't have a choice. They're in the van, right?
Yeah.
But he made, or his approach was really made a difference in me personally, and also in the players. And his approach can be summed up by simply positive self-expectancy. That was his 3 words. And the whole thing was simply always focus on what you want as the desirable outcome, instead of telling yourself what to avoid. Mm-hmm. The classic thing in tennis, I hear it all the time. I do a lot of collegiate matches and so on. So coaches can coach during college matches. They can't during USTA matches. But so I'm up in the umpire's chair, and I just hear virtually everything the coaches tell their players on the changeovers. And for example, Dennis Waitley would say, never tell your player, don't double fault, or don't miss that shot up the line. Don't do that.
Yeah.
Instead, tell your player, get your serve in, hit the ball over the net, hit the ball cross court, whatever the instruction may be. And so that on the player's mind then is the positive outcome, rather than the player getting ready to serve and saying, oh, I hope I don't double fault. I don't want to double. Because your brain hears double fault. It doesn't pay attention to the don't, and therefore you're probably going to get a bad outcome. But as simple as that approach is, it made a profound difference to focus on the positive outcome rather than avoiding the negative one.
It was huge for me as a kid growing up. I remember Dr. Lohr. You remember him? Jim Lohr was a big tennis impact guy. He was, somewhat in the same, deal. What we're telling ourselves, right? Our self-talk. And if we start thinking like, hey, stop hitting that backhand wide. Don't hit it wide. Like don't is a bad word to start with in the first place, right? Because it already starts formulating like, what if I do it? Like, so it's amazing how that those just little turns in words can have so much impact. And as you talk about that game, you coached me for 2 years. You know that is my game, right? Stay out there and wear them down, right? Like I don't know how many matches I won. I recall beating a lot more talented, more skilled tennis players athletically by staying out there, persevering and making them miss by the pressure that was applied by, I got to hit 4 more shots against this player than I do against anybody else. And I'm tired. I'm fatigued. Any way I could get an edge, I was looking for it. But one of the things that was so profound for me when I played for you, as a very, I was an ultra competitor, and probably a strength and a weakness like anything, right? I love to compete. Absolutely wanted to win all the time. And my anger and frustration of not winning was a negative impact for myself, for my team. You saw it. It wasn't great for me, as a 19, 20-year-old kid. And it was really a maturing process for me. And one of those maturing processes when I was sponsored, and I'm cracking rackets, it wasn't so bad. When I had to pay for it, I learned that's not so great, right? That couple things, that tightened things up pretty fast, actually. But you told me one day, I'd played a match, and I played a pretty good player, but, I hadn't played well. And I lost, and I was just angry. I mean, I was just angry that I really felt like I could have pushed this player a lot harder, even though they were a lot better than I was. I probably should have lost, but I was used to beating players that were a lot more skilled than me. So I expected, as Dr. Whately says, I expected to win. I went on a court expecting to win. And you said, hey, listen, did you do your best? Which I'm sure at that point, I probably shot you a fire and brimstone look like, I do my best, right? When I go out to play. But the impact of me was like the next thing you said when you said, hey, can you expect anything more from yourself? And I just thought, hey, that's it. That's all I can do is bring everything I've got today. And some days that's awesome, right? Some days I was pretty good. And some days, right, it wasn't so great. And I'm sure the other person on the other side of that had a lot to do with that, right? Like that I wasn't, doing what I wanted to do with it because they may have been controlling things and the points in the match. But that really pushed me to a new level of solace that I could go out and prepare and let the chips fall where they may. But those ingredients, I still knew. I still knew that if I didn't prepare, I did have myself to blame. But if I felt like I'd done all those things and went out and did my best, I found I could live with the result without the anger, without the angst. And I thought that was probably a pivotal moment for me as a young man.
Well, it's interesting. When players like you, which were on my team over the years, when they would get so down, let's say, about losing or not winning, it's interesting. I would use a baseball analogy. I would ask them, hey, do you follow baseball? Oh, yeah, sure. Who's one of your favorite players? Oh, Barry Bonds, or who knows, depending on the time, bench, whatever. I said, okay, what do you know about their batting averages? Oh, well, Barry Bonds is, again, I'm not a baseball statistic guy, but let's make something up. What was Barry Bonds' lifetime batting average, do you think? 290,
like 300, maybe okay. 300, like he's a power guy.
Exactly. So, or pick any player, even Ted Williams, right? His
400, not even lifetime. He did that once.
Yeah. Okay. Well, but I'm saying you can pick any player you want, even the best in the world at what they do, like Ted Williams, and say, hey, what was the batting average? Oh, 400. Oh, isn't that amazing? Blah, 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 blah. I says, yeah, it's amazing. But do you know what that means statistically? Well, it means he's a really good hitter. Well, he was a really good hitter 40% of the time.
Yeah.
In other words, he failed 60% of the time, and yet he's still the best human being ever at the plate.
Yeah.
And so it's interesting. Tennis players are have a peculiar view generally of wins and losses. If they don't win a tournament, they think they failed. Now, the
Yeah.
fact that they went through 4 rounds before they lost, they
Yeah.
seem to like discount. Well, wait a
Yeah.
minute. But
128
I
down to
didn't.
16. You were the top 16 of the
Yeah,
128,
we have
right?
192 players in that
Yeah.
draw, right?
Yeah.
In the national. And the guy loses in the round of 16. He goes, "Oh, doggone it, I'm a failure." Wait a minute.
Yeah. Failure.
Anyway,
Come on.
so it's interesting to bring into balance. That's the point, into perspective, as I tried to do with you and the players of when I coached. Look, did you do your best? We're going to have good days and bad days. Everybody does. I mean, Cabrera goes 0 for 4, right?
Yeah.
Sometime.
Yeah.
Does he? I don't know what his heart and soul is, but I doubt if he goes into the clubhouse thinking he was a failure that day,
Right.
or that it carries over to the next day, even worse, right? Put your losses behind you. You had a bad day.
Yeah.
Fine. And so one's self-talk, if you will, or one's perception of the moment, the result, the outcome, the day, the tournament, the match, that's important, not only for the moment, like living with yourself, not tearing yourself apart that day,
Yeah.
but also for tomorrow. Even more important, for tomorrow. Put it behind you. And tennis players, because the game has so much psychology and emotion to it, sometimes they struggle with that more than other athletes might in other sports.
Yeah, I think it's huge. And going on your point, Andy Roddick was really good about this. Everyone was on Andy Roddick back in the day because he was only the 5th player in the world. And he was like, "When are you going to start winning some Grand Slams, Andy? And when are you gonna, and everyone's kind of like, "Man, you're just really not getting it done." And he's like, if I was in the NBA, I'd be a starter in the All-Star game every year for the last 7 years, right? Like, I'm one of the best
Right.
10, and that's the starting 5 in the Eastern Conference and a 5 in the Western. Like,
Yeah.
I'm one of the best. Like, and they're kind of like, "Well, yeah, I know, but you don't beat Roger." Like, what? Wait, what? Like, so it is perspective, right? And I think the
Right.
psychology part is such a big deal because, like, every sport is psychology. And I just did this show 2 days ago, and they asked me about this, and I said, man, I did the show Leadership DNA, and they asked me about it. I said, the exercise science and physiology, you and I are both science guys, and I love it. And I said it was crucial, but I don't know if it was as valuable to me coaching professional athletes as a psychology degree would have been. Like, it was.
Yeah.
There's so much at that level, and
Right.
the physical variances are just fractional, right?
Oh, yeah.
But the psychological variances end up being the massive, discrepancy in the gap. And so it's a very interesting prospect. Let me flip this a little bit, Anya. Let's talk a little bit about the most impactful point, a pivot point that you had, maybe as a young man, that you kind of knew you were destined, where you wanted to, leading young people, being a college professor, coach. When did you see that clearly for you? Was there a moment in time that kind of changed things for you and said, "This is what I really want to do"?
I'm not sure I ever had one of those eureka moments. I'm kind of a cerebral type person rather than emotional, so
Yes.
it takes time sometimes for things to sink in. But I can think of a pivotal time in my life where I kind of was awakened, and that is I had very high success in sports in high school, in particular 3 sports, and particularly because I was physically talented and skillful and whatever, and I didn't go to some big urban metropolitan school either. I mean, we were a smaller school, but nonetheless, it's hard to look beyond, so to speak, your own everyday existence and try to get a balance point, especially for football, because there aren't postseason tournaments. There weren't any then anyway. So anyway, I'm a celebrated athlete on the football field. I get a scholarship to Butler University. And I go down there and I wake up to the fact that I'm no longer a big frog in a little pond. I'm a little frog in a bigger pond. And I struggled to deal with that after having so much early successes, again, without the ability to have a reference point, outside. I mean, my dad was a swimmer. He didn't really participate in college athletics. My mom, like most women of that day, she was an artist. I mean, so they didn't have experience that they could share with me. So my own experiences were there, right? And when you're a big frog in a little pond, like I say, it's hard not to escape the fact, well, I'm really something, right?
Yeah.
And but you get out of that pond and wow. So the reason I mentioned that experience is because it woke me up, I suppose, to the reality that the world is a bigger place. And if it's a bigger place, there are a lot of other people out there that have very diverse experiences and thoughts and so on and so forth. So that widened me, so to speak, to be more accepting, to be more empathetic, if you will, to differences and difficulties in people. Because, again, you take a naturally talented athlete, I don't care what sport, and, you say, well, this player is just an amazing player, best in the world, blah, 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 blah. Let's make him a coach. Well, turns out the really best naturally talented people are not really very good, in my opinion, at teaching other people.
That's right.
Because they never had to go through that step-by-step process of a learning process, whether it be sports or academics, it doesn't really matter. So it's not an intuitive type thing. I mean, we talked about this the other day shortly about, catchers, for example, in baseball being very desirable in terms of managers because that's what they do in their own job, when they're playing is they manage the game behind the plate. So that was sort of a turning point. But again, it wasn't a light bulb went off kind of point. I realized that in the next, coming 2 or 3 years and then realized, well, I better think about this a little differently. I better start working a little harder to, let's say, learn new things and earn development rather than just being granted development, so to speak, genetically or, skill-wise.
Yeah, I think that dealing with, I wonder if universities are better at that today or organizations. I don't know how good we were at it in professional baseball either, because we had the same issue, right? Bring in a kid from the farm who, throws 93 miles an hour. Now he's got to compete with the All-American from LSU or Texas, one of these prestigious schools that everybody's talked about. And he's always been told he's a superstar and he's great. And this is exactly where I belong. And we get our old imposter syndrome going on. Well, I don't know if I belong here. I didn't star at a big college and, and all these things. And it's tough. It's tough in all sorts of things, whether you're, the first chair at high school and then you go to the symphony at the university and you're like, well, you're 7 now. Like, wait, what? No, I'm the best. Everyone's told me forever. Well, like all the others, 12 in the department, they're also the best they were at too, right? So we all come together. We got to sort it out. And it's one of the things I think that I really got to, and I really love that you mentioned that because it really broadens your lens. It really makes you more open. It's one of the things I love about athletics, as we talk about a social time in our life of racism and posturing and, we come from a line of England where there's a caste system, right? And that's really been away from America, and athletics more than anything separates that. We won a world championship with people from 10 different nations and business cultures and nationalities and colors. And like, no one ever asked like, hey, if you can play, I don't care if you're purple, Darrell, you're in. Like, that's it. Like, it is a melting pot, but it also comes back to one goal, and we're in it together as a team. And I love that aspect of things. But I do wonder how many organizations lean into that challenge of a young adult coming into an environment like that. And because that challenge is real and it repeats itself every year again and again in these transitions of doing something new. And I don't know if it stops, because you had to transition when you took over the tennis program. And then you got to transition when now you're the head referee of the USTA Boys Nationals. And then you got to transition from longtime professor to retirement, and then you got to transition, and there's a different lens, there's a different look, and I don't know how good we are at that as a nation to prepare and ready ourselves for adapting to those things. What's your thought on that?
Well, my thought is going back to that KISS method, so to speak. Again, to keep it simple, stupid. There are a multitude of variables out there in life in general. You mentioned businesses or teams, or it doesn't matter. Again, with my simplistic approach, there are just some key features, personality features, emotional features, however you want to say that, psychological features that are key, totally key, fundamental, that will enable you to be successful at whatever you choose to do. I'm pretty old guy. I come from an era where, again, the messages that I received growing up were consistent. So again, I simply say, I use the word lucky. You said, no, you're not really lucky. Well, I understand. But the point is, it wasn't a challenge for me to find my way, so to speak, in the world, because the world around me was consistent. And I simply followed the path.
Yeah.
That was to my benefit. Well, as time went by, that became old-fashioned or not progressive, or whatever term you want to say. It was less desirable, right? To listen to somebody and do what they told you to do. No. I'm an individual. I'm free. Well, freedom is wonderful. Freedom is wonderful if there's a pathway, if there's some guidance in that. Total freedom, I say, is sometimes like you give somebody too much rope, they'll hang themselves. They don't want to, but you give them too much of something and you don't give them direction. It's a hit or miss thing. And in today's world, with all of this, the multitude of different messages that are coming in to these kids, again, where is their direction? So getting back to the KISS method is, look, you listen to whatever you're involved in, and you say, well, I listen. Well, yeah, you got your cell phone sitting there on the table. Yeah. You're talking to two other people who also have their cell phones sitting on the table. Yeah, but they're not ringing. I'm not looking at them. But when they do ring, what do? Oh, yeah. And I think, something as simple as that, how rude, so to speak. You're talking with somebody personally that's physically there, and then a call comes in and you take the call. No. Pay attention to the moment, get the most out of the moment, whatever it may be. So listen, and that means visually, audibly, and so on. So take in the moment. Number 2, reflect. Like, not maybe at the moment, but later that day, the next day. I wonder what Joe really meant, or, when Joe said this, that's kind of interesting. I don't think these kids have any time to reflect. They're constantly bombarded with new stuff,
a lot of stimulus,
distractions mostly. So they can't listen very well. They can't reflect and therefore obtain some sort of meaning out of what they didn't listen to, right? And then thirdly, work hard or work smart is the more modern interpretation of that. Hard work is something that's important. I don't care if it's on the football field, the tennis court, or in the classroom. You got to work and dedicate yourself to that. And then perseverance, a word that's come up several times here, or persevere at that. And then I suppose you could add a 5th one in there, is reflect. Like, stand back, try to be outside of yourself and say, Darrell, what have you made? What have you done with your life, so to speak, this last week, this last month, this last year, whatever. And then be truthful with the answers to those questions. Oh, Darrell, you screwed up. You lied. You cheated. You abused this person. You missed this opportunity. And don't walk away from that. Don't turn your back on that. You'll never be able to benefit from that knowledge if you simply say, doesn't matter. Never happened. It's not my fault.
Yeah.
Well, so that's not a simple answer, so to speak, to your question, but those are the things the 2 things that I found in the students coming up within the last, let's say, 10 years that I taught in college. The 2 things that bothered me the most were, number 1, the students did not really have a good grasp on how to learn. They didn't know how to learn. Now, if you know how to learn, it doesn't matter what subject you're confronting.
Yeah.
You'll learn math, you'll learn sociology, history, geography,
Yep.
It doesn't matter. If you know how to learn, it's a tool you can apply to that process.
Mm-hmm.
Number two, the really disturbing thing is they didn't seem to care. That is, student comes into my office and says, "Hey, how am I doing? You know, I'm 2/3 of the way through the semester. How am I doing?" Well, first of all, I post grades daily. You ought to know the answer to that question yourself.
Right.
It's online,
Yeah.
right? Well, okay, fine. You want personal touch. I totally understand. Like I'm old-fashioned. I'm into that. I say, well, you're sitting here with a 43%, 2/3 way, 3/4 way through the semester. Oh, really? What do I need to do to pass? You're very tempted as a professor to say nothing. At 43%, 3/4 of the way through the semester, there's no way in the world you're going to pass this class.
Yeah.
And then when they realize the reality, you politely tell them, I wouldn't be crude like that, but say, well, mathematically, I'll play with the numbers. Well, here's the numbers while you're sitting in the office. You're just not, you can't achieve 140% on the next 4 tests.
Right.
It's impossible. Right. Therefore, you can't. And at that point, it's interesting. I mean, I don't expect a person to break down and cry to say, "Oh, my life's come to an end." I don't expect that. But they say, "Oh, well, I'll just take it next semester." Well, there's somebody who's probably going to flunk it again next semester because they didn't review and realize why they're in this position this semester.
Yeah.
So that's that old, what does information mean to you? What are you going to do about it? And we're not at a lack of information these days or lack of access to information. I mean, we're overflowing with access and information.
Yeah,
so
I think
this isn't an issue of our society uninformed. It's an issue of our society not knowing what to do or not willing to do with that information what they need to do. So again, pretty complex answer to your question. But
one thing that really comes out of my mind in that is that accountability to me is like a 4-letter word, right? People don't, I'm like, hey, like, no, this is good. Like, we have to be accountable to somebody and to some things, and people don't like it necessarily always. And I appreciate that for sure. I don't like accountability all the time either. I'd like to, order room service and eat bonbons and, you watch Netflix all night, but it turns out I would be, 100 pounds overweight if I did those. Like there's a consequence for that action, right? And I felt that. I've felt that, having a terrible meal and waking up the next day going, like I don't feel good. So we've all had that immediate response. And I'll tell you as a 51-year-old person, who I went to college and I learned at college how to study. I had no idea when I went to university how to learn something. Now, I should say, I guess I knew how to learn a little bit from sports. There's a lot of coaching and there was a lot of team, but how to apply that to be a student and actually do the work, prepare, learn. I learned that at university. I learned that at KVCC. Now, when you talk about accountability, I never had a problem caring about what I cared about, but let's talk about what maybe I didn't care about. There was I don't know if I ever said like, wow, I got to get a degree. This is so important. I was at university doing what I wanted to do, but the accountability for me was you gave me a scholarship and paid for my tuition. And that was a beautiful thing for me. But I also know if I failed my grades, the tuition reimbursement wouldn't come anymore. And I was no longer to be able on the team. Like that was an automatic. You were removed. It wasn't a right. It was a privilege. And you had to do those things in order to maintain. So there was a built-in accountability. And now I'm thinking, well, if I got to study and I got to maintain, there's no reason to get C's. I might as well get A's, right? Like, why would I just, quote unquote, half-ass it, right? I didn't know the language. So I just think that we're missing that. And part of that is, man, you know the kids, and especially you and I in this environment at the junior college, like it didn't take me but a second to know the kids that were doing the job and paying for these tuition credits and the kids that mom and dad were paying and yeah, I'll just take it again. Like, there'll be another check, for next semester or whatever. I could sniff that out in 15 seconds, right? In a conversation. And you saw the way they carried themselves about what this meant to them. Because if you had the young lady who worked down at UPS from 11 p.m. till 4 in the morning, and she wasn't coming to you with a 43%, two-thirds rate. She was coming in on day 3 going, how am I doing? It's day 3. How'd I do on the first quiz? Like, am I studying the right things? Am I reading the right material? Do you think 2 hours in my text chapter is enough? They're asking the questions, in a, not a post reactive. They are being proactive and getting involved in how they could learn
Correct.
best. And you see that those two variances of style. What's that?
That's right. They care.
Yeah.
They care. And the why that makes the difference between those two types of people is the person who worked at UPS there. She or he care about different things, but they care about constructive things, whether it's being, hey, I've got a family to feed, or I want to get to a point where I don't have to work midnight to 4 or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. That whole issue of consequences in today's world, American world, United States world, in my opinion, over the last number of years, politically speaking, leadership speaking in this country, there's been I don't know if it's a concerted effort, but it's been, I think, a fairly successful one, separated or broken the connection between that concept of behavior or decisions and consequences to the behavior and decisions. That relationship has been dramatically weakened. That's a complex topic that you could talk about forever as to why or who are the major players. But I think that's been a major issue in our country in let's say, 10 years, last 10 years or so. So I'm not picking on any particular political party or politician or anything, because it's a countrywide thing. And, when you break this law, and somebody says you're going to jail for a week or whatever, it's going to cost you $500, whatever. That's not a good thing, but it's reality. And you, boom, my God, I don't have $500. Or, yeah, I guess I have to spend 4 days in jail because I don't have that money or whatever.
I could lose my job. I could, if I'm not going to show up for work for 3 days, I lose my job. Like all those trickle effects of those decisions. That's right.
So, but I think this society has moved away from that reality. That is, nowadays it's more, you break the law and it's like, who cares? It's like, we're too crowded. We're gonna let you be. Never mind. We're gonna let you.
Yeah.
So again,
it's a significant issue.
You started your point here about accountability, and I agree that is a key issue in whatever development goes forward in a person. If you're not accountable, and you don't learn from your mistakes or your weaknesses, then there's no improvement. There's no advancement. There's no, quote, success in any way, however you want to define it, if you don't do that.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing that people are missing about accountability. You're doing this for me. You're holding me accountable so that I learn the science in class, so that I can be a contributor in the medical field. If you don't do that, I don't get the ladder, right? Like I don't get to contribute in the medical field. I don't have the degree. So what you're doing for me, while tough at that time, serves me ultimately. And I think that people miss that. Like we're having a tough time connecting those two things. And so let's talk a little bit. On the show, it's Winners Find a Way, right? Which is from Chris McChesney and Sean Covey's book, The 4 Disciplines of Execution, which says, quote, "Winners, when shown data that they are losing, find a way to win." Question for you is, you've had a lot of success. You've won a lot in a lot of different ways, right? But what is the best battle that you've conquered in your lifetime?
Wow. That's a tough one. I tend to minimize.
Darrell, I don't ask easy questions. You didn't come on the KISS show, bro. Like I came to bring the heavy stuff to you, man.
You're holding me accountable. You're being consistent there.
Yeah.
I tend to downplay or underemphasize my own successes, I'm not the billboard type. People find out about what I've done or how long, and they say, "Really? Wow, that's amazing." As you know, I've ridden my bicycle coast to coast twice, right, on trips. We average 115 miles a day for 40 days. And, now, that's not something everybody knows about me, and that's okay, right?
Right.
But when I'm in a social gathering or whatever, I say, "Oh, I just bought a new bike. I'm riding 25 miles." I say, "That's really great." And I don't say anything, right? They say, "You ride?" I've ridden. I mean, I coach it that.
I've ridden coast to coast twice.
Yeah. Well, I've done like, what's your longest day? Blah, blah, blah. And then, so they discover this, of me, not because I'm coming in it right away. So when somebody asks me, what's your biggest accomplishment, or, where was the major turning point? I probably have had a number of them. But to say, oh, here's what really turned my life around, that's tough. I will say, let me cite one unfortunate, event, which you probably know of this event. Coaching, as you know, like parenting or whatever, it's extremely demanding, and coaching in particular keeps you away from your family for extended time sometimes. And coaching is done on schedules, but life is not, right? So things happen in life, and sometimes you can deal with them, sometimes you can't, because proximity or whatever. So on May 25th, that's the National Junior College Championships every year in May. I was down in Central Florida, Central Florida College in Ocala, which is where they were held at that time. And our youngest son was born here in Kalamazoo. I was not here. Now, I, of course, blame Nancy for that, because she was overdue. We had it all planned out. But the point is, I mean, our family is fine, and it wasn't like a big trauma. But as I look back on that, I think, wow, that wasn't a good situation.
Yeah.
I mean, I was not. There weren't complications in the delivery or anything. No big super story to this, except for the fact, year after year after year for the rest of my life, I go back and say to Craig, that's the son that was born. I say, "Craig, happy birthday." He said, "Yeah, Dad, glad you're here this time." As a joke.
Yeah, forever.
Craig.
Yeah.
I'll be here for your birthday this year, Craig. So I'm not sure that's a turning point, but it's one of those things of the reality, and so not an adversity, not getting over something. I was here for all my other kids being born. Yeah. But that's one of those things I do recognize as, wow, that was a sacrifice on everybody's part.
For not just you, right? Like everyone's involved in that a little bit, right?
No, not me at all. So Nancy recruited a very good friend of ours, Mary, and Mary was me in the labor room. She's a labor coach. And they had a dinner together at the hospital, which they don't do.
Yeah, we forget, like well, I don't know if we forget, but like it's people adapt around for our lives, right? For our careers, for our passions, and it's not an easy one. It's one of the things I learned as a young age. Nick Saban actually sat me down and said that, like, talked a little bit about how tough that is. Like, hey, you make this choice, like, let me tell you what it's going to be like. And I think he was really the first guy who really said, like, get ready. And I was like, wow, like, you see all the good things about coaching, and hey, let's win a championship, and I got a new job, and this organization, they really want me, and like, oh, Andrew, he was the first one who says, you're going to get fired. And I'm like, oh, no, I don't want to be fired. And he's like, oh, yeah, you won't have any choice. Oh, yeah, he's like, they're going to like their staff, and it's not anything to do with you necessarily. Do your best, and maybe, but I was like, wow, he really opened my eyes to it, but the blessing of a great family that can take those sacrifices in stride for whatever you're going for, right? Like, that's really critical on the people we choose around us, because we want those passions. Tell me a little bit about what you learned on that ride. I mean, 115 miles a day. You go coast to coast. How many days does that actually take?
40.
40?
40 days. 40. Yeah.
And you do that every day. Is there ever a day off?
Yeah, we did have a day off. One day in Grand Junction, Colorado.
So do you do that's not day 20. Yeah, beautiful place to have it. Beautiful place to have it, but you're also breathing through a straw at that altitude when you're a Kalamazoo, Michigan guy, and you're up at 7,500, 9,000 feet.
Well, I don't know what Grand Junction's at, but we did cross the Rockies at Wolf Creek Pass, which is 12,500.
Yeah.
So that is a legitimate physiological challenge.
Yes, legitimate. Yeah, people don't appreciate that about the Tour de France and cycling up into the journeys.
That is the most demanding athletic event in existence, in my opinion. But yeah, that ride changed my life. It was a life-changing experience. I mean, not that I literally changed my life. I mean, exteriorly, but emotionally, physiologically, psychologically. Talk about something that's psychological. You can imagine 150, and you're at mile 80, and it's raining, and it's 51 degrees, and you have a 10 mile an hour headwind, and you're in Nebraska. I mean, really?
And your legs are just burning. Like you got lactic acid crazy, just built up. Like man.
Absolutely. So now I didn't do this myself. This was a KVCC actually sponsored trip for the bicentennial in '76 was the first time, and then we went again in 2000 for the millennial. But the first time we went, I think the biggest blessing was we had no idea what we were getting into. None.
Just blind stupidity was the blessing.
It was blind stupidity. And by the time you're in Kansas, okay, you realize we're all in this together. We're all a bunch of idiots, but we don't have a choice. You're in the middle of Kansas. You live in Michigan. What are you going to do?
Yeah, right.
Right. So it was a great experience for team building, if you will. I mean, we weren't literally an athletic team, but we took a bunch of college students, 23 people.
Yeah.
Started in California, everybody enthusiastic, blah, blah, blah. And then you hit the Sierra Nevadas in, like 2 hours. And they're not very, not a high elevation necessarily, but very steep, right? And curvy.
Yeah.
And so after 2 hours, enthusiasm kind of fades, man, when you hit these mountains. You've never ridden mountains before.
Yeah.
So anyway, talk about perseverance. I mean, for 40 days or 39 of riding, but 40 days, and you don't have a choice. Here again, in modern terms, everybody choices. Oh, we don't want to finish today. Fine, let's not finish. Well,
yeah, right.
If you don't go 115, that means that tomorrow you got to go 190.
Yeah, right.
And
we don't have a hotel at 61 miles. We have a hotel at 115.
There ain't no hotels.
Oh, you did? Where'd you guys stay?
Well, tents. We had decked out a school bus with bunks and everything, an old school bus. We refitted.
Wow, this is camping.
And we also had tents. The kids brought tents, and we bunked out at football fields of schools and senior centers and anywhere that would have us. Indian reservations out west. It was really a blast. But it was a wonderful experience bringing people together. Again, that wasn't the intent, but it was inevitable when you present a challenge to a group of people and there are no choices. Period. I mean, you have to do this.
Right. Well, I don't know that would work. I don't feel like getting on the bike today. Like, what's that got to do with it?
Well, that's fine. Don't get on the bike today. Guess what? You're going to have to spend twice as much time tomorrow. I mean, the blatant reality of this, it was a blessing. And this is in 76, of course. In 2000, it was a totally different atmosphere. We had more adults, more professional people that, could afford to take off 40 days of work, like attorneys and, whatever.
Yeah.
And so there were more adults than the 76 trip. And the 2000 trip was a whole lot less fun.
Really?
because, oh yeah, in 76, you had a bunch of folks, including the leaders who had no idea what the hell we were doing. And we were all in this together and we all succeeded together. In 2000, it was a bunch of people who, well, not all of them, but a lot of the adults who were already bike riders, proficient bike
Yeah.
riders, bike club members.
Yep.
And they thought each one had their own idea what was the best thing to do.
So very little alignment.
A very little alignment, and people that were adults who were obviously rich and they were used to doing whatever they wanted to do in life
and making the decisions.
They could afford to do that.
Yep.
And they did not respond as well to my leadership, let's put it that way, because I was the one responsible for that trip almost individually. And so we had a couple of riders that left, that came down halfway. We offered 2 halves to the trip from California to Iowa, Mississippi River. And then you could join us there, and you could either do the first half and then leave, or join us there and go to the East Coast. And we had a number of people, 4 people that came down and joined us. And that was fine. It was part of the plan, but they just were not willing to join the effort. And plus they joined it in the middle, right? All these other people, they'd come all the way from California. So anyway, totally different.
That's pretty awesome, man. Let's I gotta wrap this up. I loved hearing these stories. Let's last thing, Darrell, best way to win. Is there something that we didn't share today? We talked about the KISS principle. We talked about, building alignment, getting, finding that area in your life where you can get a consistent message about what direction you might want to go. But it's time for the best way to win. Is there something that you want to share with the listeners that we did not touch on today?
Well, something amusing. And I've since discovered that Albert Einstein actually said something about this. So that's not why I figured this out. But you may remember, perhaps again, not your era, but when a player of mine continued to do the same thing wrong, let's say, like they kept hitting the same shot and it was not successful.
Yeah.
I had a name for that. I call that insect mentality. Because as you know, insects can't think. They just keep doing something until they die, right? And so that was a cute way to let my players know, hey, change. Learn how to do something different.
Adapt,
quit doing the same thing incorrectly all the time. Einstein said it, I guess it was in 1981. I just came across it. And let's see what the quote was. But he said, insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different outcome. So what is the key to somebody winning? We used the word already, and that's adaptability, right? You've got to adapt and change to a more successful outcome if you're not having success. I think that's the key.
For everyone, please follow the YouTube Live, our channel, Leadershipity channel. We are at Leadershipity on Instagram. Twitter, I am at Trent M. Clark. My handle's on any of those that are Trent M. Clark or Leadershipity. Love to have you follow. Please like, please subscribe. Share this video. Give us a 5-star rating if you enjoyed it. We'd like to always bring high-level content. Look for our upcoming ebook, The Pyramid of Leadershipity. You always can direct message me or email me. Let me know what you think. We'd love to hear it. Or comment in the comment section. My quote today was on James 1:2. When you talk about that, I love James 1:2. Consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of many kinds, because you know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance. And I think that's one of those hard things as a young person to really think about, like, oh, I'm losing. This is great. I'm getting a chance to learn. like that is not what we're thinking. And no one, I lost my job. Oh, this is pure joy. No, it's shaping you. Like when we won, and I think about the time like in tennis, right? Here I go play the round of 32 and I win and 6-0, 6-1. I don't think anything about that match, right? All it's about is the round of 16 match. And then I win that. All it's about is the quarterfinal. And then the semifinal, I lose and spend the next 2 weeks laboring over that semifinal loss. Like, what did I do wrong, coach? Darrell, work with me on this. Why don't we talk about the three matches you just smoked people and what you did right and how you're going to continue to strengthen that, right? And we so often don't do it. It's the trials that shape us. It's the perseverance that we have to face in the losses that often just is, and I don't know if it's just human nature, but I don't recall counting it as pure joy. I'll tell you that.
No, the meaning of success, period, not in a win or loss, is simply sustaining through adversity and learning from it. There's another Bible verse that talks about the sword and the tempering of the sword and making it, more fire makes the sword stronger. I totally agree.
Yeah, it's awesome. Well, Darrell, thank you so much. Looking forward to next week on the Winners Find a Way show, where we welcome Ann Gaffigan, who is the U.S. holder for the steeplechase. She's a great athlete, and now on to all sorts of business success and all things. But super excited to speak with Ann on this. Darrell, so much. Hey, mentor of mine coming on board. I'm so happy you could join us and have a little fun talking some shop.
Happy to do it. Good job.
Thank you for being here, everybody. Leadershipity channel. Tune in every Friday. Winners Find a Way. Look for the podcast coming soon. And can't wait to see you next time. Thank you for joining us for another Winners Find a Way show. I am your host, Trent Clark. If you love this episode, share this episode with your friends and follow us on whatever podcasting medium you're listening to. If you want more content from us, join us at leadershipity.com or the Leadershipity YouTube channel. You can find us on all the social media networks at either Trent M. Clark or Leadershipity. For our award-winning workshop, Win with Great Teams, you can find that page on LinkedIn as well as our corporate page, Leadershipity. If you want to win more, it starts with you today. Say it with me now. I have what it takes.